Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And this week I gave a talk at a bank of all places, and one of the questions that I was asked was, if we crave a certain food, does that mean that we need it? There's a lot of conversations around, well, if you crave something or you want something, we have to trust that our bodies know that it's something that we need. And we do see this we know that sometimes people who are deficient in iron have cravings for red meat, as an example. I worked with someone and they have very kindly let me share this with people, because when they told me, I was fascinated and asked if they wouldn't mind me sharing this bit that they told me about their story. And they had the gastric bypass surgery, and after the gastric bypass surgery, quite often there are certain foods that you cannot eat because your body doesn't tolerate them very well, and they can make you ill. And one of the foods she found did this for her was meat, unless she was menstruating. So for 1 week of the month, she could digest meat no problem and she wanted to eat it, and for the other 3 weeks of the month, if she tried to eat it, she got quite ill. That was fascinating to me, that the body knew that there was something that it needed and it could adjust its capacity to get what it needed according to that need. Now, I have heard this talked about even in as much as a craving for chocolate means you're low in magnesium. Maybe, maybe not, maybe that's a push, I'm not sure. If it was just about a craving for magnesium, then some dark low sugar chocolate would hit the spot, and perhaps for a lot of people, certainly for me, when I want chocolate, that's not going to hit the spot. So I'm guessing for a lot of the time it's probably not a magnesium deficiency. But let's say, for example, it could be a need for energy. So you're working all day, maybe you're not moving much, but our brains use, I think it's 20% of the body's energy. So it's an energy hungry organ, our brains. We can feel exhausted when we've been concentrating hard, or even when we've been, battling with ourselves over food all day. When we're in conflict, we can find ourselves feeling quite tired. When we're stressed, we find ourselves feeling quite depleted. So there's this need to feel energized again. And I think sometimes we sometimes we have a craving for certain foods, perhaps quite calorie dense foods, because we're looking for that boost. We're looking to kind of feel mentally more alert or something like that. So when we're talking about whether we need what we're craving, I would say that there is a need there that we are craving a food to try to fulfill. Now, there are some needs that only food can fulfill, like hunger, like the need for certain nutrients, like energy. In some circumstances, obviously, there are other things we can do to boost our energy. And there are also many needs that food can help with to some degree that are not just about our physical bodies. So if we think about emotional needs as well, so a craving could also be an emotional need for comfort, for self-soothing. To feel safe is a big one, and that one, often people don't really know why they feel that way, but they're like, I just feel safe when I eat. And I probably the therapist in me, I think it might even go back to our really early feeding experiences, where that we would have been held when we were fed, and we've just been torn from our mother. Oh gosh, that was a horrible way of putting it. I was then going to say discarded, but that's even worse. We left our mothers. We were one with the mother's body, and then we left our mothers, and actually the one time that we're back in close contact with our caregiver is during that feeding process. Now, we don't have any memories of this time, but we have a nervous system and an emotional system, and we're learning all the time. So I wonder whether it just goes in so early at the felt level that we might turn to these foods for comfort in those times. And I think I've mentioned it before, but I've heard that the only place that nature puts sort of sugar and fat together is in mother's milk. So there could even be a link between what we were fed as babies and then our desire for these certain foods. It's fascinating stuff. I mean, I don't know how you measure it, but it's worth considering the possibilities that this might be having an impact on how we're feeling today. So I know many people who come to work with me say actually what they want is to just see food as fuel. And I just don't know if that's possible. When there's been so many emotions around something, to suddenly feel completely neutral about it. I think we can feel more neutral about it, but food isn't just fuel. It performs so many other functions as well, and it affects how we feel. Even if we're just eating when we're hungry, and then we eat and we feel better. So it's always impacting the way that we feel. So therefore our emotions, I think for most people, are always going to be intertwined with food. And I think it's worth a shout out to hormones. Hormones are powerful, really powerful. And most females who menstruate or have menstruated will have had that experience of that PMS hunger and how intense it can feel. And not just with PMS, there's so many other things going on hormonally in the body. And this one is particularly dear to me because I have hormonal issues, and I really believe that where my eating started, it was this perfect storm, and that hormones played a massive role in it. I have something called hypopituitarism, and it's basically where my pituitary gland doesn't work properly, so it doesn't tell my hormones what to do. So, for example, my thyroid doesn't work, but my thyroid is fine. It just doesn't get the message to tell it what to do, whereas most people who have a thyroid problem, the problem's in the thyroid. And then, so something like estrogen, we know has a appetite decreasing effect. So the higher your estrogen, your appetite's likely to be a bit lower. And we have our estrogen levels going up and down, so our appetite is affected. But what happens when we're trying to follow an eating plan is we're trying to decide in advance how much food we need. So we're trying to keep to certain types of food or a certain amount of food, even though we've got these hormonal rushes that our appetite's going up and down. So I think if we naturally followed our appetite a bit more and our hormones were working well enough, then it would probably balance out throughout the month. There might be days when we ate a lot less and days when we ate a lot more, but we tend to look at it as sort of trying to eat the same amount every day, which I'm not sure is particularly helpful. I wish I had some amazing advice for you about how to deal with hormonal hunger. I've done a video about it, I'll link to it above, but this is your biology, this is powerful stuff, and we know so little about it. It is such a complex system. So if you think there's hormonal stuff going on, then first of all, the first thing I would say is trying to go down the medical route about balancing out anything that you can get in that aspect, having your hormones tested, and seeing if there's anything doctors can do to help you level it out. And then with that path kind of exhausted or sorted out, it really is a case of just managing from a self-care point of view as best as you can. Like, how do you look after yourself? What helps you to feel more balanced when you are feeling that way? Because it might be when you're feeling like that, actually you eat some more of certain kinds of foods and you feel better. But if you're eating more and more and more of certain kinds of foods, you're binging and you're feeling worse and worse, that's when it's becoming kind of more detrimental as such. So worth considering when you're having a craving for a certain food, to try and figure out, is this a physical craving to do with like energy, or potentially if it's a very specific type of food that is particularly well known for certain nutrients. Think there might be something like that going on, to ask yourself what the emotional need might be. And I also want to mention gut health. Now, I want to kind of impart this information cautiously, because I know what you lot are like. You're black and white thinkers, so you'll try and take this information and beat yourself over the head with it. But I think it's worth sharing, because I think people often take quite a binary view when it comes to gut health. You've got like the healthism people on one side saying, well, this is how you need to eat to support your gut health and telling us what we should be eating. And then you've got the people on the other side who's saying, eat whatever you want, as if you have any craving for it, it's probably because you want it, so keep eating it and it will balance out. And that may not be the case if there's some gut stuff going on. One of the ways I heard this explained to me by a nutritional therapist that I used to work with, I really liked, and it helped me to kind of wrap my mind around what this idea is. So we have a lot of microbiomes in our gut, and a lot of them are very different, and they respond to different foods, and they send signals up to the brain kind of to crave certain foods and to encourage us to eat, should we say. And she described it as being like a rainforest, your gut, with all these different species. And if you overfeed one type of species, then they will overrun and overflow, and it will dysregulate this finely balanced ecosystem. So the thinking behind this, for example, would be that if you eat a lot of sugar, you will produce more gut biomes that deal with those kinds of foods, and they will overrun and continue to send up signals to you to say, we want this kind of food, because they're trying to stay alive. It's one of the reasons why variety is so important, to try and balance this out. However, this is the last piece of the puzzle. So many people get stuck when it comes to getting out of binge eating, because they focus on trying to change their behaviours. It's why I'm sharing this information cautiously, but it feels important to share it, because it feels like for some people it's a missing piece of the puzzle. They're doing the intuitive eating, they're giving themselves permission to eat whatever they want. And it could be that there's some cycle like this going on, that they don't get to the stage where they suddenly crave vegetables. We're told that's what's going to happen with intuitive eating. But actually, if there's some gut imbalances going on, and the other one that's worth just a quick mention is blood sugar. So if we're eating a lot of sugar throughout the day, like our blood sugar is going to go up and down, up and down. And it's that falling blood sugar, those drops, that bring on these really intense cravings for more sugar. So you could get stuck on this blood sugar roller coaster going, when is this going to stop? And for some people, it doesn't seem to just stop. And I want to say again, use this information cautiously. I was not sure whether to even share it, because I am an all foods fit person. I absolutely do not want to moralize one food over another, but all foods fit, but all foods are not equal, and they don't necessarily have the same impact on us as other kinds of foods. There is a reason why gentle nutrition is the last principle of intuitive eating, because I think there is emotional and mental work to be done first. And when it comes to like nutritional changes or conscious choices to make because of nutrition, we need to be careful, because that's so intertwined with diet culture. But the first thing I always say, and I know a lot of other great intuitive eating practitioners out there say the same thing, is to add stuff in. So rather than saying to yourself, oh my goodness, Sarah said that sugar has this impact on my body, that means that sugar's bad and I shouldn't eat sugar. My encouragement, and I'm not a nutritionist, so take any nutritional advice from me for informational purposes only, whatever it is I need to say from a legal perspective, is to introduce variety. That's it. So with this information, that is my only advice that I would give to you about it, is to introduce variety. So perhaps when we think about things like fruits and vegetables, like adding more in, not necessarily trying to take stuff out, because we need to be careful when we're taking stuff out, because you could trigger off restriction, which is only going to lead to more binging anyway. So I hope there was some information in this video that is useful for you, that you can think about. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it, I'm just going to keep saying it. Do not use it to beat yourself up, and do not use it to say to yourself, right, I have to just change the way I'm eating, because we know that doesn't work. You wouldn't be watching this video if it did. Okay, see you on the next video.